Silicon Valley, technology, art, green, and sustainability.
Welcome to another episode of Silicon Valley Tech, Art, Green, and Sustainability. Today I'm honored to have with me Geoff Alexander, and you're from the American Film Archive of North America. I want to get that right. And thank you for joining us today. Before we get started on what you do and your nonprofit, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, where you're from, whatever you want to share?
I was born in San Francisco, but I grew up in San Jose. I went to Lee High School. And at one point after high school, I ended up working for the County Office of Education, taught special ed children, and started showing them 16 millimeter films. That was our mediated curriculum in those days. And what I would do is I would bring the films home at night.
Okay, you say those days. How long ago?
Oh, we're talking about like 1978.
Okay.
Okay.
I would say 80s, so almost guessed it right.
Yeah. But what was interesting is I'd bring the projector home, I'd bring the films home. I lived in an apartment, shine the films across the apartment building across the way, invite people over for beer and hot dogs, and we'd all preview the films. And so it was just fun watching these films. That's how I initially got started doing this.
And then did you go to school, college for something in the arts, or?
Well, I went to the Berklee College of Music in Boston.
Okay.
And came back to San Jose after that, decided I didn't want to play music for a living. And
what kind of instrument did you?
Electronic Farfisa organ.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, and I was playing some real avant-garde stuff. No, I went cold turkey.
Okay.
But I did get involved in the high-tech world. And so I became a high-tech consultant here. And then sometime in the 1990s, the San Jose Public Library decided they would sell their 16 millimeter film collection. So what I did was went down, stood in line, bought some films, and brought them back to my house. I bought a projector from somebody who was also in line and started showing films in my backyard. And they were really cool. And I became really curious as to who the people were who made these films. And nobody had ever done any historical work on them. I mean, there was nothing in magazines, nothing in books, anything. So I started to interview these filmmakers. I would figure out where they lived and call them up on the telephone. Nobody had talked to them in years. And so meanwhile, every week I'm inviting people over to my house in my backyard. We're showing films, setting up a screen.
And what year about was this again?
Early 1990s.
Okay.
And then what happens is one day the San Jose police show up. It's the riot squad. And the woman behind me, who was crazy, who had a substance abuse problem, had told the police, called them up and said, they're having a raucous party over there, they're disturbing my sleep. And
this is downtown San Jose again?
This is 15th Street.
Kind of near San Jose State?
Yeah,
so
15th Street.
They probably thought you were some college kids or something, maybe?
No, she had an abuse problem and she didn't like me.
Okay.
So I don't know what story she told the police, but they did show up in riot gear and they busted the party. And it was 9 o'clock on a Saturday night. I wasn't even late. And one of the people who was at that event was Paul Burnell, who's an esteemed judge and our city historian.
Wow.
So he went out and he and I spoke with the police and we agreed that would be it. And I never showed a film in my backyard ever again. So we needed a place to show films. That's how we ended up at the Agenda Lounge on the corner of First and San Salvador for what became a series of 415 shows.
Wow. So that started in 1990?
Roughly 1995.
95, okay. That's about the year that I graduated is the year I graduated San Jose State. Let's pull up slide 1 right now. So that was this is incredible. So is this your archive here then?
This is our archive today. Our archive is now twice as big as this. There is no blank space anymore.
We can pull that slide down. So how many films do you have then?
We have 7,000 films in that space.
Wow.
We have another roughly 5,000 on extended loan that are in different locations. So essentially we have about 12,000 films.
So, okay, I was thinking 10, because in your book I think you say about 10.
Mm-hmm.
So, plus you have other people that also collect what you don't collect, who were in your group or are in your group, our friend Dan.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot. I mean, I didn't realize how many were out there, and they were just, what was happening with them? They were just getting dumped, or?
Well, yeah, so between the whole movement that's known as educational film, started around 1910. Thomas Edison did some early educational films. It ended about 1985 with the advent of VHS tape. So at that point, 16 millimeter films, which were very expensive, went away. And a lot of the content on those films was not recast into VHS tape. So the content was being lost. What started happening from about 1990 onwards is school districts began throwing away the films. Said, we don't want these anymore, they can't find homes for them, nobody will buy them. So they started throwing them in a landfill. And that was a red flag to me, because I had seen so many of these films that were really good. I determined, well, I think we better start historically looking at this as an art form that we can't throw away. And there'd been a precedent for that. About 70% of all silent films are now gone forever because they threw them away. They didn't think they were important. And we knew that was happening with these kinds of films.
And it's North America, and did I read in the book that Canada is where a lot of this was produced?
Yeah, so the name of our archive is the Academic Film Archive of North America. A lot of them were produced in Canada. And the National Film Board of Canada is really an important key public entity in these kinds of films. So I wanted to make sure that we didn't ignore the Canadians when we put this archive together. Now I call it academic film, so let me explain what academic film is.
Okay.
Educational film encompasses humanities, science, and guidance films. Guidance films are the school bus safety films that are kind of kitschy, that everybody really loves to watch.
The sex education films.
Sex education,
that they made
school
us
bus
watch.
safety. Yeah, exactly. When it's a rainy day, you go to the gym and watch stuff about girls if you're a girl, right? That kind of thing. We're actually not interested in those films. There are plenty of people who are. We're interested in the humanities and the science films because the content is so darn good and so interesting. And we didn't want to see the content go away. So we gradually have gotten to the point where we put films online. And a lot of the people who use our films online are teachers who are still teaching those subjects and use this content, which in many cases, even though it's 40, 50 years old, is still new, just as new today as it was when it was created.
So you've been doing this over 20 years then?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is a question that I didn't prepare you for, but are there other similar organizations like on the East Coast that are doing the same thing, or are you pretty much the only one that's doing this?
Well, we're the only archive in the world that's focusing on this type of material.
Okay.
When we started, nobody really cared. But we talked it up, wrote a few books, made a lot of presentations. And now other archives are starting to realize this material is really important.
And are these a couple of your books here? Do you want to show?
Yeah, these are a couple of books. Films You Saw in School.
Okay. I'll hold this up so if they want to take a close-up of this. So Films You Saw in School.
And then the other was Academic Films for the Classroom.
Okay.
The difference is Academic Films for the Classroom is a history of the people and companies that made these films. Films You Saw in School is a compendium of about 1,000 reviews of these films, many of which are available on the internet now. So the great thing about it is you can read about them, you can hit a link, and you can go and you can watch them, which is wonderful.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pull up the next slide. How many employees do you have? And do you have employees? Tell us about this right here.
Oh, that's our board of officers.
Okay.
And
I think the slide said a t-shirt crew, or?
Yes, those are our Cine 16 t-shirts. Now, before we were incorporated as a 501c3, we called it Cine 16. That was in front of the Agenda Lounge, and we have a board of officers.
In the good old days of the Agenda Lounge.
In the good old days of the Agenda Lounge, we were operating underground. That's where we did most of our 400 shows. And it was a real bohemian atmosphere, Heather. We encouraged people to smoke.
So employees or volunteers?
Those are volunteers. We have no employees.
And there's about a dozen, 20?
We have 10 hardcore volunteers.
Okay.
Including me.
Okay.
Okay, I don't make any money either. So we have no paid people.
Let's pull up the next slide because I think this is maybe one of your key volunteers here with you.
Yeah, that was actually taken up in San Francisco. We did a number of shows in other cities, including St. Louis, San Francisco, Austin, Texas, basically all over the place. This was a show we did up there. So people started finding out what we were doing in San Jose, and then they would want us to come into different cities and replicate that.
Pull that down. Are you producing films yourself too,
No.
or have you ever?
I have never.
Okay.
I don't have that talent.
Okay. Well, you probably do after seeing so many films.
No, I'm a good watcher.
I mean, how many films have you probably watched yourself
Oh,
that you've archived?
15,000.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So how often do you still take films into the archive?
We
And
still
are you
do.
Are you
We're-
actively looking or not actively looking?
Well, if the collection is good enough, we'll take it. Although, by golly, I don't know where we're going to put it now. We've almost completely maxed out our space, but yet, when we are notified that there's a collection available, and I go through everything and I see what they have, we don't take duplicates. But if it's great stuff, we've got to take it. So, for example, last year, even though we're out of space, we got offered a collection that had basically a history of racial relationships in the United States from the 1960s through the 1970s.
Wow.
Incredible films that
Wow.
aren't seen very much anymore and that are extremely rare. So we took everything.
That's pretty interesting. I'm going to ask you about airings later on in events that you do. But I want to ask about the nonprofit. So you started, I'm going to hold this book up. It is a nonprofit, and I'm going to ask about how you fund it, grants, events. Tell us about this book too. And you're a nonprofit, so when did you become a nonprofit?
We became a nonprofit in 2001. The reason we became a nonprofit was so that public institutions that wanted to donate films to us could do it legally. They legally can't donate films to private enterprise. They have to give them to other nonprofits. So we incorporated in 2001.
And again, that's the transfer of assets to another nonprofit.
Right,
Right?
nonprofit to nonprofit.
So that the
That's-
for-profit doesn't sell them or whatever.
Right, exactly. So we had to do that, and started the nonprofit. Made the applications, did everything ourselves. We found that because nobody was really interested in what we were doing, that we couldn't get grants. We were ungrantable. We were unfundable. So we had to basically figure out a way to make it all work out and make it sustainable. So that's the foundation of that book. We've been doing this now for about 16 years, and people think we're a huge organization. We're 10 volunteers with no money. So they ask us, well, how did you do it? And I answered that so many times. I said, well, I'll write a book and I'll show you how we did it.
Well, I started reading it. I haven't finished it because I just got it a few days ago. I'm a bit busy, but it is a great tool. And so it's the Nonprofit Survival Guide, a strategy for sustainability. I really like it. I'm going to finish it because we've been wanting to be our own nonprofit as well, because we do educational events and, of course, this TV show. So how long did it take you to write this?
About 2 months.
2 months, okay.
Because everything had been so well documented, I could just sit down and write it. And what I try to do is figure, if somebody's starting a nonprofit, what do they have to really be thinking about when they're doing it? One of the things that's kind of radical in there is I tell people how to take it down and how to wrap it up if it's not working. And we also have a survival...
An exit plan for
An
it.
exit plan. We
Yeah.
also have a survival guide there. So if the director dies all of a sudden, where is everything? Where are all the passwords? Who pays this bill? Who pays that bill? So it's really ideally set up for one of these really small nonprofits that's full of passion, but has no money.
Well, that sounds like us, right? So
Yeah, we're all in that category.
I'm going to pull up, I'm behind on the slides, so let's pull up the next two slides. Okay, and here you are with, again, this is an archive in your own home, or?
Yeah, this is in my basement.
Okay.
I don't have any space in my basement for everything but film.
Wow, okay, and you're one of the lucky, pull that down, you're one of the lucky ones with a basement, because some of the houses in San Jose don't have basements, but the older ones do. And let's pull up the next slide again. And then what about this?
This is our space at the Agenda Lounge,
Okay.
where we did the 400 some odd shows. This is how we had to set up the projectors. We had to set them up on a bar and then shoot forward.
Okay, and we could pull that down. So are you still doing events at Agenda Lounge, or no?
No, we're not doing events anywhere. When we did events at the Agenda, maybe 20 people would show up, maybe 50 people on a good night. We thought we could, by digitizing films and putting them up on the internet, instead of having 20 people watch them, we could make them available to millions. So that's been our mandate now for about the past 8 years.
going back to the nonprofit and starting it, what's your number one advice for people that are starting a nonprofit on a shoestring budget or no budget?
You have to, well, first of all, you have to have passion and you have to really believe you want to do this. The thing I really care about is making it sustainable from day one. So you have to think about sustainability all the way through it. Sometimes you have to make hard decisions. Sustainability means, well, especially at the beginning, nobody gets paid. We don't pay rent. We don't buy insurance. And you have to look at it from that perspective. And those are the most successful ways of looking at sustainability from the beginning.
So when I did start reading the book, I was shocked to learn it was like something like 938,000 nonprofits at that time were going. And like a third of them, or maybe more, only made 20, and we can talk about this, we're not supposed to talk about pricing, but 25,000 a year. And some of them didn't even file taxes. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, so I mean the statistics are outrageous. Okay, so there are about 974,000 nonprofits in the US. That's 1 million nonprofits. 50% of them make under that amount you just mentioned, or don't file taxes, which means they're not even making that. There's no sense filing taxes. An astounding 771 nonprofits start every week.
Wow.
So the nonprofit biz is huge in the United States, but there's so many of them that are small. And there's so many of them that are struggling.
And that statistic was probably about 10 years ago, so I bet you it's probably even more now.
That was 2008, and 2008 is the last year we can get statistics.
Okay.
So they'll run the statistics again in 2018.
Right.
So those are the most up-to-date statistics we can get.
So either starting the nonprofit or in business, what's been the biggest challenge you have had, and then how have you overcome it? And I know you talk a little bit about it in the book. And
well, the biggest challenge we had initially is we were unfundable. We couldn't get any money. And so we actually tried. We did go through the grant process with private foundations and with the government, but we weren't feeding the homeless, we weren't curing cancer, so we were not on the funding scope.
Kittens.
Yeah, we weren't saving kittens. We're an arts organization. And if you look at what's happened in San Jose over the past 5 years in terms of arts organizations going into business, we all know how difficult it is to fund an arts organization. So that was the biggest challenge. The response to that was, to stop crying about it, be a big boy about it, say this is not fundable, it's really important, so let's just knuckle down and figure out how we're going to do it without getting funding.
So I'm going to pull up another slide now, and I'm not sure. Yep, there we go. Now, who's this with you?
Okay, Richard Von Busak, who's the film critic for the Metro, is on the left. That's me on the right. And Berinda Samra, who's our vice president, took on the role of Miss Cine 16 once a year. And she gave fabulous prizes to people who attended our events. Everything was an event with us.
So I was going to say, is she Miss India or Miss
she was
San Jose?
She was Miss Cine 16. It's right on the sash.
That's awesome.
Right on the sash.
What's been the biggest win for you for what you've been doing and personally too?
Well, we get a lot of great wins because we work with families of the filmmakers and the old filmmakers, and they never got much credit when they were doing their films. And the risk was that they were going to die being unappreciated. So we have worked to build them web pages, information on our site. A lot of them have had a second career and have become famous because of our site. That's really gratifying. One thing that was extremely gratifying is that we have one of the oldest films ever taken in Africa. It was shot in Namibia in 1927.
Wow.
And we were contacted by a group that was affiliated with the San Bushmen, and they were losing their land. The Namibian government was taking it away. They told us that if we could take this film there and they could show it to the Bushmen and they could identify geological features and ancestors, they might be able to go to the government in Windhoek and get some reparations for their land.
Wow.
So I took the film over there, we put it on a VHS, took it around on a Jeep, and that's going through the government channels right now. They've actually got a lawyer involved in that.
So when did you do that?
That was about 8 years ago. And these things take forever in Africa, but that's an example of a win we really could get if the Bushmen could get some kind of reparations for their land.
So I think I know the answer to this, but what is something that the community can help you with? Or there's several things the community can help you with.
Well, two
And
things.
let's pull up the community slide really quick. We have this one little community slide we always pull up. So community holding their hands up, what can they do?
Well, first of all, if they have some property that's got some storage space we can use for films, we would love it if they'd consider donating it to us. Not as a permanent gift, but give us some space. That would be something they could do. Our projectors are also failing. If anybody has any Bell & Howell 2592Bs.
Do you want to talk about the projectors too?
Yeah, that's our projector. Many people have never seen a 16 millimeter projector.
I haven't seen one in a long time. This
or a
is cool.
16 millimeter film. This is leader. This is how big this stuff is. And basically it goes through a lamp here and projects onto a screen. And this is really old.
And can you use just a white wall, or does it have to be like a specific?
Oh no, we use white walls, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
And is that why the agenda worked? Did they have did you put a sheet up? Or
They actually had a screen.
They had a screen.
Yatsik had a screen, which was great.
Okay.
But many times we've been in venues where we have to show these against white walls, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty cool. And do you have several of these then?
We have several, but they're always breaking down. And one of the issues too is the people who repair them are dying. So once they're gone, we don't know how we're going to get anything repaired. So what we're trying to do is collect as many as possible so that when a projector goes down, if we can't get it repaired, at least we got something to take its place.
It sounds like something the tech shop should be involved in, right?
Somebody.
Somebody.
But let me explain why we need these. So if we don't do public shows, why do we need a projector? Well, these projectors have stop action. And so when we watch every single film that goes into the archive, because we take notes, put it in the database, and that's how we do the history. We have to have something that has stop motion so we can take notes. And these are the best, these are actually the only effective projectors for doing that, this particular make and model.
I think I told you I have some film. When my grandfather passed away, I threw it all in a little closet, and it's starting to smell a little vinegary. Do you guys do any restoring of film too?
We
or?
don't, but we can tell you what to do about it.
Okay.
Put it in your freezer.
That's what somebody said. I have to clear out some freezer space.
Yeah, there goes the pizza.
Yeah, there
Okay.
goes whatever, right? The wild boar or whatever. I asked you about this a little bit ago. You're not hosting events anymore, but are you interested in hosting events and showing some of these?
We have decided to focus instead on putting them on the internet because we can get more people watching them that way. So we want to put all of our resources in terms of public performance into actually getting them on the internet where they're used all the time.
So I'm just thinking about partnership with other nonprofit organizations like CineQuest or whatever, how fun that would be to be able to have a filming at CineQuest or one of the film festivals or the National Endowment of the Arts, partnering with them to do something. Just thinking out loud. So yeah.
If we're invited, we'll always do it.
Okay.
So that's the short answer. Yeah, give us an invitation, we'll do it.
And of course, if somebody can give a little funding towards your cause too while they're inviting you, that would probably be a good thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we the way we get funding is people sponsor digitization and uploading of films. You can find more about that on our website. That's how we actually get funding for what we do.
So what's the most exciting part about what you do? Maybe it's different now than when you first started doing this. Tell us what the most exciting part is about what you're doing.
This
with
is
your
a people
nonprofit.
business. And the most exciting part is dealing with these older filmmakers and their families and creating a vibe for them so that they know that their important work won't be forgotten when they're gone. And every day I get a telephone call or an email or something from one of these people, and they're just so thankful we're doing this. And you know what I tell our volunteers is, look, this is not an immediate gratification business we're in. Nobody will care right now except for a few filmmakers and a few million people out in the world who are watching our films. But 2 or 3 decades down the road, they'll care. So that's the philosophical approach we have to take, is that we're doing it for the future, and that's a reward in itself.
I'm still blown away that Hollywood didn't make some of these films. Some of the people that wanted to get in the film business, that it was done somewhere else. That statistic or that fact alone is kind of blown me away. Yeah.
Yeah, but there is some crossover. So for instance, Tom Smith, who made a couple of films that we show on the internet, one on holography, which is our most viewed film, George Lucas hired him to do the graphics on Star Wars. So he was the guy who built Industrial Light and Magic. So there is some crossover between our world and Hollywood.
Which seems like there should be a lot of crossover support there too. What's the one thing you want people to remember about you and your organization?
Well, I think it's what people are going to remember about us isn't what's happening today. It's what's going to happen 20 or 30 years down the road. And again, that requires kind of a unique vision in terms of how your nonprofit's going to work. But we're not necessarily here to be thanked today. We think we're going to be thanked by media scholars, excuse me, historians, and people like that in the future. We're all going to be gone by then. And that's okay. That's the way our organization works, and that's the way it's set up.
Is there any other last thoughts you want to leave the audience with? Any other points you want to say?
Yeah, we have some partnerships that are really terrific partnerships. I want to mention History San Jose, because without them, we wouldn't have an archive. But also, we formed strong relationships with corporate entities like Encyclopedia Britannica, with the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, and with people like the Library of Congress. They all work with us because we're an incredible resource for them. And so this series of resources we have seems to work really, really well. And I think that's really important too.
And the Library of Congress probably doesn't have storage for you either, right?
They don't.
They don't.
They don't. But we assist the Library of Congress in getting massive collections that we can't take. So we work very, very, very heavily with them.
So again, for the audience, if they're interested in seeing these films, they can go online. But if they're interested in digging deeper, maybe seeing something that's not online, they'll just contact you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what they can do is they can say, do you have anything on this particular subject? We might be interested in sponsoring it. We can, because we've got a great database.
So art history again, what is science?
Science and the humanities. So anything to do with the arts, writing, art, music, anything like that, or science, any kind of hard science. Physics, astronomy, anything like that.
Well, this has been really, really interesting. I want to thank you for coming on the show. And maybe in the future we can do an SVTAGS airing of one of the films. Sports Basement's been one of our sponsors, and we sometimes have events there and various other places. So that might be something we can do in the future.
Sounds like fun.
Thank you very much for coming on. To the audience, follow us on Twitter, SVTAGS, www.svtags.org. We also have a Facebook page now. We are doing events too, so check out our events on Meetup. And make this a great week by conserving, reusing, and re-choosing the way you choose to live here in Silicon Valley and beyond. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.